this idea that I'm just kind of starting on my intuitive journey. I am venturing out into the spiritual world and I'm just seeing what's floating around out there, right? Because it's really good for me too to like tune in to see what other people are saying and doing and kind of get the temperature of the water before I talk about something. And it was really interesting because I discovered that there was a ton of misinformation out there and some of it was actually harmful. And then I get really fired up because when I first started out, I think I was exposed to some of that harmful information.
Your journey to the divine is an intimate exploration of self, where you are both the seeker and the source of enlightenment. I, Jessica Paschke, invite you to break free from the ordinary, to reforge your spiritual path with courage, curiosity, and audacity. Unleash the power of your spiritual connection, stepping into a purpose-driven life free of have-tos and shoulds. Join me on this profound exploration of rediscovery, where you'll not only redefine your own spiritual practice, but also inspire a collective awakening. Welcome to Reclaiming Our Spirit.
Welcome to Reclaiming Our Spirit. I'm so glad you're tuning in to episode 3. We are going to be chatting about intuition. I'm really excited. It's an important conversation to have, I think. Reclaiming our intuition, really reclaiming it, not going by what other people think intuition is or what we've been told it is, really reclaiming it for our own. But before we dive into intuition, I want to share a little spark of joy. I want to do this for each episode because joy can be really challenging. And I think we sort of get in the habit of like, this is what brings me joy. And then we like don't see all the other opportunities for joy in our life because we just are kind of moving along through life. And there's so many different ways to experience it. So I hope me sharing a spark of joy with you brings a little joy to your life, but also helps you find more on your own as well. So this spark of joy totally connects to my daughter. She'll be listening to this because she tunes in, I guess. That's what she tells me. She has been changing the lock screen on my phone and the screen on my watch. So I never know what it's going to be, ever. Every time I pick one of those things up, never know what's going to stare back at me when I turn it on. And she put Snoopy on my Apple Watch face. So it's not just Snoopy as an Apple Watch. Every time you move, Snoopy does like a little animation, like flies a plane or goes camping or goes surfing, hangs out with Woodstock. And it always makes me giggle a little bit because I love Snoopy. Snoopy just in general makes me smile and his antics. But also I love that she did that for me. It just kind of creates that extra heart spark to go along with it, that she wanted to do this for me, that she wanted to make me smile. She wanted to make me laugh. She wanted to do something fun and something silly. I love that about her. And it just sort of gives me a glimpse into where she's at in that moment. So that's my joy for the week. Something really simple. Snoopy watch face. Intuition. So we were just chatting about this in Spiritual Compass exploration I did, because it's a really critical piece to living a purpose-driven life. And there's a lot of different ways that you can like define it. So I'm just sharing my thoughts with you. It's not the end all be all. And I'm not going to pretend that I know all there is to know about intuition. What you're getting is just a little slice of the picture from my personal experience, from my clients and students' experiences, from conversations I've had with my friends and my peers, from classes I've taken or books I've read, combined with real-world experimentation. So as we talk about intuition, take what resonates with you and leave the rest, because that's the beautiful part of the intuitive world. We're all unique. We're all different. And how we connect to our intuition is based on so many things. Definitely our own personal journeys and life experiences come into play. So how you perceive it is totally worthy because that's what your experience has been. And I love that. And this kind of go-to rule is, it's like for every episode on here, we're just having conversations. So let's just tap in and define intuition. And then I want to tell you a little backstory about this episode. So intuition, if you look in the dictionary, it's the ability to understand something instantaneously without the need for conscious reasoning. Or they'll describe it as something that someone knows from like an instinct kind of point of view, or tapping into something where there's no like evidence. They talk a lot about this immediacy of it, like it immediately happens, or having this knowledge gained by intuitive hits. It's the dumbest definitions I've ever heard of intuition. Didn't resonate with me at all. In fact, that's actually what kind of sent me down the rabbit hole, because I was reading the dictionary definitions that didn't really resonate with me, were super vague. And whenever I go to chat about something or talk about something that I've talked about a lot over the years, I kind of like to look at it through new eyes because it's boring for me to talk about the same old thing, as boring as it is for you to hear about the same old thing. And some of you have been around for a while, years and years. So I was like, we need to refresh this conversation on intuition because I could do it, but yawn, wasn't intriguing. So I thought, how am I going to approach this from a new perspective? And I was like, okay, I'm going to approach this through beginner's eyes. This idea that I'm just kind of starting on my intuitive journey. I am venturing out into the spiritual world and I'm just seeing what's floating around out there, right? Because it's really good for me too to like tune in to see what other people are saying and doing and kind of get the temperature of the water before I talk about something. And it was really interesting because I discovered that there was a ton of misinformation out there and some of it was actually harmful. And then I get really fired up because when I first started out, I think I was exposed to some of that harmful information, that old, crusty spiritual junk that was being preached. This was decades ago, but being preached as word, the all-encompassing word with a capital W. And it was so confining when I was learning about it. I'm talking in my teens. Like, so this is the way Mandalorian type of thing, right? And at its core, intuition should increase our connection to ourselves, to the people around us, to the world. It should never create a disconnect. And yet I am sorting through all of this information and all of this junk out there that makes me feel like, ooh, I'm not special enough or worthy enough to be intuitive. And it took a really long time to deprogram from that. A long time. Sort of like once you open it, you can't close it. And I think that sometimes we unconsciously pass things down because we don't slow down to relook at them. Or we drink it in at that one point and then sort of integrate it, someone else's idea as our own. And we never take time to stop and reflect and like update it as we evolve, it should evolve. And I wanted to make sure that I was evolving the information as I evolved. So I ventured out as if I was a beginner to see what I would see, looking at what I might be watching or reading or tuning into. And there was a lot of amazing people doing really amazing work. What I'm about to talk about isn't about them. So if you're out there and you're doing amazing work, I love you and the world needs you. Keep doing your amazing work, okay? Keep making intuition something for all. But I was really surprised because I expected, expectations. We were just talking about that. I kind of expected that old rhetoric to have gone away and it was still out there. It was still out there and prevalent. It wasn't uncommon. This idea that if you can't tune into your intuition, then it's on you. You're doing it wrong. Or if your intuitive hit wasn't correct, then you totally failed and it's on you because you didn't do it right. Also, the idea of intuition is something that is a gift blows my mind. It's a skill, y'all. That I will double down on. It's a skill. And the way that people were telling the stories too, like I'm up here on this pedestal and you're down here. Maybe that was just a factor of they don't know how to tell a story. It could be. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. They don't know how to tell a story, but it really sounded like a competition of who is more intuitive earliest in life, you know? And I do think that some of it was just so confusing and vague, or just the words didn't make sense, or they had all of these rules surrounding it. Like you have to do this and you have to do it that way. And you have to remove all of these blocks. And it's so hard and it's so challenging. And it's all of these things. Or this idea that you want to throw logic and critical thinking out the door and just rely on your intuition. Spoiler alert. How about we use both? Wouldn't that be amazing? It's like a superpower. Intuition and logical mind? Hey, I'm all for it. Intuition is a tool. It's what it is. It is a tool, and you will have many tools in your toolbox, and sometimes you will use more than others. But as my dad used to say, use the right tool for the job. Intuition isn't always going to be the right tool. It's not always. A lot of times it is. Or it could be one of the right tools. Sometimes you need more than one. So just keep that in mind as we kind of have this conversation about intuition. Because I don't want you feeling discouraged from diving in and getting curious about it. And I don't want you to fall into the trap of ignoring all logic and just listening to your intuition. And I don't want you to be impulsive. You need to find that sweet spot for you. You need to figure out how intuition works in your life, how it works for you, and how you want to use it. So we're just going to talk a little bit about that so you can maybe come to some of those conclusions yourself and reclaim your intuition for yourself. That's who it's for. Your intuition is for no one else but you. And we all have it. It's a skill. It's not a gift. I don't know who said somewhere along the way that it was a gift you had to be born with. That's a massive power play. This idea that we have to be born with it. Well, we are born with it, but not just selectively. Let's put it that way. It is a skill you can develop. So even if you feel like the most unintuitive person in the world, you can develop the skill. If I wanted to come up with an actual definition for it, I don't know that I could. I think the closest I can come to describing what intuition is outside those wretched dictionary definitions is maybe a knowing, but not a mind knowing. It's like a whole body, heart, soul knowing. For me, it's something that kind of tugs in my heart space, pulls at my gut in a good way, not a bad way. I mean, maybe sometimes in a way. We'll just say in a way. We'll make it neutral. It tugs, it pulls. It's the thing that makes me pause, the thing that makes me slow down, the thing that makes me more aware. And like I said before, at its very base, it's connection, connecting to more than my five senses for more information. It's like you add that information to your human five senses. It doesn't necessarily go against logic, but it does contribute how I work through logic. Sometimes logic can carry us all the way, and sometimes we need a little bit more. And that's where intuition comes into play. It's the next thing, the something more, the thing that says, wait, check that again. Or wait, you're almost there, but not quite. Or sometimes even like, hey, really? You're doing that? Really? Have you lost it? I have had those moments with my intuition. So maybe an inner knowing, maybe for some, an inner voice, an inner something, an inner spark. And when I was reading through a lot of things out there, I noticed that this term is often stretched a bit or used interchangeably with the term psychic, which isn't wrong. But I think then we have our own perceptions about what psychic is, and they're not quite the same thing. Intuition isn't really about predicting the future or reading the energy or psychic abilities, though it can tie into that if you want to. It can. And I know that intuition does tie into our psychic work. It ties into our soul self, our higher self. But at its essence, I'm not entirely sure that it's the same thing. I don't have a definitive answer. When we talk about spiritual stuff, like we only have so many human words. So we do the best we can with the words that we have. And then I figure when I cross over, I'm going to learn a lot. Maybe I'll find a medium and start talking to them. But I do know this. Everyone is intuitive. Intuition is just another tool or another piece that helps you tap into your purpose-driven life, that helps you tap into possibilities, that helps you pay attention to the things that matter, that gives you a head up on maybe when to slow down or what to avoid. And it can kind of feel nebulous and mysterious and what is this? But once you figure out how you work, you're going to realize you've been intuitive all along. And there are so many different ways to be intuitive. So many. So I want to just kind of stretch our perception of what we believe intuition to be, because it really is a brilliant tool. And if we think of it as it's just one thing, we won't use it or realize that we're using it. It'll put blinders up. And I think kind of seeing some different ways that it can unfold, different flavors, if you will. Don't box yourself in. When I go to the ice cream shop, it's rare, but when I go, I don't ever order the same thing. So don't do that with your intuition. Let it be what it wants to be in that moment. Let it evolve, let it change, let it morph. So for some of you, it's going to show up as insights or realizations that sort of drop in like a knowing. Understanding the situation around you may be crazy fast, or an idea that just pops in, this sense of knowing. And for those who are really in tune with their emotions, it might be feeling all the feels, like feeling in our guts and our heart, getting that vibe. And our emotions. Ooh, our emotions are part of our intuition. They can be powerful, intuitive messages if we pay attention to them. What is that emotion trying to tell us? If we're angry, it's telling us something. What is it telling us? The next time you have an intense emotion, pause and ask what the message could be. What could that emotion be trying to tell you? It's your intuition trying to catch your attention. You'd be surprised what you learn. Emotions are powerful. Intuition definitely comes in for creative people. 100%. Ideas will drop in like it's raining inspiration, art, music, writing, a creation of anything, even creation of classes or spreadsheets or organizational systems. All of that can be your intuition. Your intuition can say, hey, ooh, I've got this. I was inspired. I was inspired to do it this way. I just got this hit that this needs to be the way that it needs to go. You could get like an intuitive hit, tap into your intuition while you're organizing your kitchen junk drawer. Don't let it limit you. Don't let it limit you. Our bodies, believe it or not, are part of our intuition. I don't know why we insist on ignoring our body when we go all spiritual. It is beyond me, but many of us do. I know I'm guilty of it. I don't know why we do that. It's such a powerful, intuitive tool. So with your body, you're tuning into your physical feelings. You're tuning into that tightness maybe that you feel in your stomach, the flutters. Tension and stress are a great way for your intuition to try and get your attention. Like if your shoulders are really tense or your back is aching or your neck is hurting, yes, it could be something medical, 100%, check it out. But it could also be your intuition trying to tell you that something's off, to slow down and to pay attention. If I'm walking around and I keep stretching my neck or my shoulders are up to my earlobes, something's going on. I just need to slow down and take a look. And these are just a few. There's so many different ways that you can be intuitive and explore your intuition. And like I said, we're not talking about psychic stuff. We're not talking about reading energy. I am talking about this inner knowing that's inside you. All of these concepts we talk about on this spiritual podcast and other spiritual podcasts, they're all going to tie into all the other things. That's how it works. It's all connected. But if we're just talking about intuition, just intuition, those are kind of some of the ways that it comes through. So I hope it kind of expands that space for you, that area for you. There are some challenges that happen with, using our intuition. Maybe even some pitfalls. Would you call it pitfalls? I don't know. I think you've fallen a pothole any day if you're not careful, if you're not looking where you're going. I think the biggest challenge is getting all the junk that you see around you in movies and getting rid of that perception of what intuition is, shaking it loose, being really open. That's the biggest challenge, is figuring out how you work and not boxing yourself in with other people's expectations and perceptions of how your intuition should work. A lot of the times it's more subtle than you think it's going to be. Now, I know that other people, when they describe it in books, it's this huge thing. When you see it in movies, it's this huge thing. But on a day-to-day basis, it's a lot more quiet than that. I think if my intuition started screaming at me, I'd be like, whew, I'm in it now. Something's going on. It started to scream. Okay. But it feels very day-to-day ordinary most days. I don't think it's these big grand things. I think it's something more subtle, something quieter a lot of the time, and we can miss it because it is subtle. I think people fear that if they listen to their intuition, what if they end up being wrong? Y'all are going to be wrong at some point. I'm wrong. And I've been doing this for a while. It's okay. You're going to skew it up every once in a while. It's going to happen. And it could be that your intuition was wrong. Or another way to think about it, maybe you had some expectations surrounding your intuition and what you thought it would be. Maybe you were making some assumptions. If we really, really want something, it can cloud our judgment and how we perceive things around us. Or maybe we get locked into a specific outcome. And so we translate what our intuition is saying. We translate it. Just like when you're doing tarot or oracle, you can make the card mean anything you want to. So sometimes our intuition wasn't wrong. We just interpreted it wrong or misinterpreted it. I hate the word wrong. We just didn't figure it out in a way that was helpful. Sometimes our bias can get in the way, our unconscious bias, if we have stereotypes around something or judgments or preconceived notions or beliefs or whatever it is that we're working on, it can get in the way. And that's why I think our intuition gets a lot stronger when we do work that will help us heal and understand ourselves and understand our story. People will often find that the more work they do on processing their experiences in life, understanding themselves, knowing their biases, knowing kind of where they fall into assumptions, the more work they do around that, the more intuitive they become because they can tell the difference. And there is a difference. And the more that you work with it, the more obvious it becomes. But you sort of have to see it first in order to identify when it's coming into play. I think fear plays a part, anxiety, stress. That is a question that I get a lot. How do I know if it's my intuition or just my mind making it up? If it speaks to you like an inner voice, it's not going to tell you to do harmful things or negative things. It is not going to tell you that you have to do anything. Y'all, your intuition is a guidance system, not a have to system. You still have choice. If you pick up a compass and you hold it in your hand, the compass does not tell you which direction to walk. It just tells you this is north, this is south, this is east, and this is west. But that compass isn't saying, do this. Just like when you open a GPS, it doesn't tell you where you're going to drive to until you put the address in. Your intuition is never going to tell you that you have to do something and it's the only way. There's always more than one way. So just keep that in mind when you're tuning in and trying to figure that out, because a lot of times we can take it as that. We can take it as the end all be all. And that's where we get into trouble. Figuring out if it's fear or anxiety talking is really practice. And it's about doing it, using your intuition, working on your intuition when you're not in a place where you need it, so that you're not all jacked up, spinning out, that you're calm when you tune in so you can really see how it works for you rather than just tuning in for the first time when you need it. So definitely understanding it at its core, at its root, so that you can use it as a tool when you do have fear and anxiety, because you'll know the difference. Sometimes our intuition, it can feel like we're not intuitive, when in reality, we're just resistance to change. And that resistance to change leads us to maybe not wanting to listen so closely to our intuition, because if we listen to our intuition, we'd know that we have to change something. We know that we'd have to leave or let go or release or do something differently, and then that would change everything. Living an intuitive life doesn't mean that life is always going to be easy. It just means that we're not so alone. It just means that we have more support and hopefully we'll navigate things more easily. But it doesn't wipe away our humanness. You know, I don't suddenly become this amazing intuitive individual and I don't have any fear and I don't have any stress and I don't have any anxiety. That's not how it works at all. I can have both. I can be scared and I can tune into my intuition. And like I said before, the key to making that work is knowing how my intuition works before I need it. Another pitfall I see is assumptions. Ooh, when you first start intuition and you're really firing, you can assume that certain things are the way they are because of your intuitive hits or how they feel. Assume that this is what that person is thinking, or assume that what you're feeling or picking up on is their emotions. You still have to use your words. Be aware that you can fall into a state where you're using your intuition to kind of feel something out when in reality it's a conversation that needs to happen. So don't fall into assumptions and don't use it to bypass or as an excuse. And what I mean by that is we still have to human with our intuition. In fact, our intuition works because we're human. So if you try to like block out the human experience and just do this intuitive ride, you're going to hit a wall at some point. It will happen. So maybe now you're wondering like, okay, this is great intuition. I get it. I'm ready. So what do I do? How do I develop it? And over the years, I've learned that there are so many different ways that you can, and there are so many different books out there that will tell you how to develop it. So these are just a few things that come to mind for me. One of them is practice. Practice working with your intuition on things that don't matter. What I mean is, if you're going to use your intuition for like an intuitive hit, and you're trying to figure out how your intuition works when you're making decisions and things like that, do it over something that doesn't matter first, not something big like selling or buying a house. So little things like, ooh, I'm feeling like I should take a different way to work today, or I'm feeling like I should go here first, then there. Play with it on a small level, okay? Not on a big level. I do think that that is the key to kind of seeing how it works and adjusting it, because then it's like, if you're not right, it doesn't take down the whole world. The other thing is patience. Now, practice and patience are my least favorite words on the planet. I don't have a lot of patience sometimes, something that I work on. That means that when I'm practicing something, I want it now. So you see how they're connected? But patience is key, because this is going to be a trial and error at first. And you're going to have to play with it, and it's going to develop and it's going to grow over time. And you're going to have to trust me on that. So don't give up before you get your win with your intuition. It is worth it. Keep going. The other key is awareness. And awareness can look like a lot of things. Sometimes it means slowing down. Sometimes it means being more mindful. Sometimes it means tuning in, finding a neutral space so you can tune in and get that clear connection. Sometimes it looks like reflection. There's a lot of different ways to be aware, sort of like the art of noticing, the art of paying attention. I know that's very unglamorous. practice patience and be aware. And you're thinking, but it really is that simple. I know the books make it not that simple. I know, I've read them. Not all the books. Some of them are fantastic, but I've read a lot. I've heard a lot. It does not have to be complicated. I'm going to go back to this idea that sometimes it's very subtle and it's easier than we think. And then we think we aren't doing it right because it's not hard or big to work. I know that doesn't sound exotic. I know that it doesn't sound glamorous, but there you have it. Practice, patience, and awareness. So, question for this episode, a pondering. I want to know how you define intuition. What resonated with you here? When have you experienced your intuition as well? So how do you define it? And what moments in life has your intuition popped up? I want to hear those stories. When I say that your story matters, I mean it. Your story matters. Email me. I want to hear your stories. And if you would like me to share your story, just give me permission. Because every now and then I'll share some stories. I love a good story. So give me your permission if you'd like it shared. Otherwise, it'll just be between you, me, and my inbox. But email me at jessica@intuitivebythesea.com. I want to hear your story. And I want to know when you've experienced it. And shoot me any questions you have on intuition. Because if you don't ask, I can't answer. And chances are, if you're wondering something, someone else is wondering it too. If you'd like, you can join me on the Patreon. Because we're going to dive deeper into intuition. And we're going to really talk about this idea of like, is it me or is it intuition? This idea of how do you trust your intuition? And I think we're even going to do some body scans that will help you tune into your intuitive self as well. So I love that. Dive in with me on the Patreon. You can find that information in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining me today. Next episode, we're going to dive in and look at intuition in real life. Like, what does it look like when it's in action? What does it look like in real life? And we're going to talk about stories. And we're going to get really more specific on how you can take your intuition and weave it into your business or your day-to-day life or your passion projects or whatever. We're going to talk about intuition and all of those delicious things you didn't realize that you could combine with it. Thanks for tuning in. Have a wonderful week.
Thank you for listening to Reclaiming Our Spirit. To find out how I can help you reclaim your spirit, reach out to me at www.jessicapashke.com. Leave me a message and I just may share how you reclaimed your spirit in the next episode.